Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the 2019 Dynamics Payroll Year End. My name is Elaine Christie, and I'll be presenting today, so let's get started. Here's what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to talk about the payroll-specific changes contained in the GP Year-End Service Pack or update. Then we'll review the 2019 tax tables and the first 2020 tax tables. We'll go over some keys to a successful year-end and then dive into the payroll year-end checklist, which is essentially all the steps that you'll need to go through to close out the year. I'll follow with the demo of the actual process itself and finally wrap up with some additional resources to assist. So each year, Microsoft releases a year-end update or service pack that contains the newest features, functionality, and code. This session will focus on payroll-specific changes, but almost all other modules have some sort of an update as well. For more information on the update, you can watch our 2019 Dynamics GP Year-End Basics video and find out more. So the biggest thing is that the W-4 is changing in 2020, which means that the tax maintenance window and the associated payroll tax calculations need to be updated to accommodate this. If you're processing payrolls in 2020 in GP, the year-end update will be required and should be installed before you process your first 2020 payroll. Microsoft has a blog all about these changes with examples of the windows and the new tables and basic Q&A. So if you want to find out more about that, check out our useful resources section on our GP year-end site. Fortunately, there are no W-2, W-3, electronic federal W-2, or ACA form changes for 2019. That means that you can basically use the same forms as you did last year for printing. And finally, there are a number of payroll fixes and enhancements for GP supported versions, which essentially means GP 2015 or higher. The functionality varies per version, and again, a link to the Microsoft blog detailing these changes is on our year-end site. So on our year-end site, we have a video tutorial that goes over payroll tax tables. If you haven't watched it already, I highly suggest that you do so you have a better understanding of what tax tables do, what they don't do, who gets them, and the various methods for applying them. As for the details of the tax tables themselves, in 2019, Microsoft released 4 rounds of tax table updates, and the last was released in September. First 2020 tax tables are targeted to release on December 20th, 2019. And with those new tables for 2020 comes an increased security limit, state updates, and the new rates and tables associated with the new W-4 and IRS Publication 15, which used to be the Circular E. Around year end, it's really important that you understand the timing of your tax tables, because if you don't, you run the risk of closing the year with incorrect rates and limits. So on the previous slide, we saw that the 2020 tax tables are targeted to release on December 20th, 2019. If you use the automatic method to apply tax table updates, which most clients do, you'll need to use caution around the targeted release because you may download the 2020 tax tables before you intend to. So if you want to verify that you've got the right tax table updated or uploaded, look at the last tax update field under Tools, Setup, System, Payroll Tax, and we'll demo this later on in the video. So when closing 2019, you're going to want to make sure you have a date in there of 9/27/19, which is the 2019 round 4 tax table update. That's the date that you're going to want to see. If you see anything else, you're going to want to make sure you get updated to that particular date. When you are processing your first 2020 payroll, you're going to want to see a date in there of December 20th, 2019, or something around there. Again, we don't know what the official release date is. We just know that it's going to be targeted to be around the 20th. So make sure that you've got the right tables for whatever process that you're running. But if you realize that you downloaded the 2020 tables too early, which many clients do, don't worry. You can use the manual method to roll back to the 2019 tables again. And so again, all of this is reviewed in our payroll tax table update video. So check that out to learn more about your automatic and manual methods and how to roll back tax tables. All right. So before we get into the checklist, I want to mention a few things that will help you with your payroll year end and just make the process go smoother overall. First to note is to make sure you're using the right checklist. So if you need to process a 2020 payroll before you can close 2019, make sure that you use the alternative payroll year end checklist. We've got a link to that on our site. In today's tutorial, we're going to go over the standard checklist, meaning we're going to completely finalize 2019 payrolls and process our payroll year end before doing anything in 2020. But if that's not the case for you and you need to use this alternative checklist, make sure to reference that instead. Second is that by far the majority of the time that we spend with our clients is around payroll reconciliation. And you can get a jump start on these reconciliations by doing a mock year-end close in your test company. Tie out your W-3 to your 941s, the payroll summary. You want to make sure that your benefit and deduction summaries tie out to boxes 12 and 14. Make sure that your state and local taxes all tie out to the W-3 and identify whatever corrections need to be made. Again, this is where we spend most of our year-end assistance with our clients, is just doing these reconciliations and then identifying the problems. So if there are things that you know that need to be fixed or adjusted, start with those reconciliations now. Next is for anyone who's filing W-2s electronically, you're going to want to make sure that you have your business services online or your BSO credentials verified. If this is a new process for you and you need to request or just get registered, give yourself a couple weeks to do that because it takes some time before you can get fully logged in or to reset your password if you've forgotten it. So just don't let that wait till the end. If you're using email W-2s through Integrity Data, start collecting your electronic W-2 consent and updating email addresses now. Remember that consent is only good for 1 year, so just because an employee provided consent for 2018 does not mean that you have consent for 2019. So get that electronic consent, make your updates within the Integrity Data product, and update email addresses as needed. Next, order your W-2s and your envelopes if you're not printing on blank paper. If you're using Deluxe, which is Microsoft's recommended reseller for tax forms, make sure to allow proper time for shipping, especially if you're up here in Alaska. I've heard that it can take some time. Most of our clients choose the 4-up style, which means that you've got all 4 copies on one sheet, one in each corner. But some states require 6-part forms. So make sure that you know how many parts your state requires and that you've downloaded or that you've ordered the appropriate form set. And then finally, again, don't forget to get your envelopes as well. There's nothing worse than printing out your W-2s only realize that you don't have anything to put them in. So don't forget your envelope. And finally, be proactive. Don't wait to solve the issues that you know about today. Year end is stressful and busy enough without having to start fresh with your reconciliations or making these corrections. So if you know about anything, get it resolved now so you don't have to do it all at the very end. All right, so now let's get to the actual year-end checklist. What we're going to be presenting today is a modified version of Microsoft's checklist. We've kept the main step numbers the same, but we have included a number of sub-steps, so anything with the letter after it. Those sub-steps are what we recommend based on our experience over the years in working with our clients and closing out payroll. So again, the main steps will be the same, but we've got some additional sub-steps in there to help out. So let's get started. Okay, so first is to verify we've got our last 2019 tax table applied. So again, we're going to check for a date of September 27th, 2019. If we have anything other than that, we're going to need to make sure that we update. Again, as a tip, and this is in our other payroll tax video, you want to launch GP as administrator to prevent any download errors when using the automatic method. You're going to want to log in as the SA. That's the only person or user that can download the tax tables. And then just use caution around mid-December because you might download the 2020 tax table without intending to. So just use some caution. You might need to use the manual method instead. So once your tax tables are done and verified, you're going to complete your 2019 payrolls and then all of your regular 2019 month-end, quarter-end processes. It's still a quarter end, even though it's also year end. So get through all of your regular routines first and close out those processes. Step 4 and step 5 are Microsoft's recommendations. So step 4, Microsoft recommends that you take a pre-year end wage backup and then install the year end update. Now, RFIT actually recommends that these steps are step 0, that you get your year end update done before you even start on your payroll year end. The very first thing you do is coordinate year end because that service pack is going to be required if you're processing payroll in 2020 at a GP, and it takes some downtime. You've got to update your server, your terminal servers, all of your workstations. You've got to coordinate between IT, HR, payroll, finance while you're down. And so it's not something that you want to do at the same time you're trying to close the year itself. So we recommend that you just do these steps 4 and 5 first. Get that scheduled and in place before you start on your actual checklist. Step 5B is going to be to check your PTO manager settings. So a number of our clients use PTO manager to handle their accruals for vacation and sick time and PTO. And with that product, you have the option to close your PTO year separately than your payroll year. And this is by far what most of our clients do. So you're going to want to verify that the year-end closing using PTO utility checkbox is marked so that when you process your year-end and payroll, it doesn't automatically close the PTO year as well. Very similar to a build in the standard payroll process where you build and check and make sure things are good, and then you might find that you need to make some adjustments, and then you remove your build. With your year-end close in GP, you might close the year, realize that there's some issues, and then remove the year-end close. If that checkbox isn't marked, you keep reclosing your PTO year back and forth, and you don't want to do that. So make sure that checkbox is marked so that your GP year-end close for payroll doesn't affect your PTO year-end. All right, so to go along with that, run a smart list of all of your vacation, sick time, and PTO balances. And then don't run just the balances themselves. Make sure you've got your employee ID, the accrual code, and the balance itself. So take that report or that smart list, export it to Excel, and save it with all of your other year-end reports. If for whatever reason you forgot to check the checkbox in step 5B and you need to re-import balances, it is so much easier to do it when you've got a backup of all of the information already handy in Excel. So keep that as a backup so that if you need to re-import or reset those values, that you've got the data to do it. Step 5D is to verify your pay code benefit and deduction taxes, especially if you have new plans or new codes that you've created throughout the year. And then step 5E is to verify the W-2 boxes and labels associated with those codes. So in general, there should only be one box and label per pay code benefit or deduction. The system allows for 4 boxes and labels per code, but you don't really want to do that because oftentimes people don't realize that they've filled out that box twice, and then when they get to the W-3 and are looking at their summaries, their amounts are doubled or tripled. So make sure that you've only got one box or label per pay code benefit or deduction so that you don't duplicate your amounts on the W-3. And for ACA, the trick to preventing dental and vision plans from affecting 1095 is to make sure that box 14 is set to none and box 16 is set to none. That way, dental and vision doesn't affect your 1095. Now, this setting needs to be done at the beginning of the year. So if you didn't have this in place for your first payroll in 2019, your dental and vision still might be affecting things, but you can at least get this setting right for the next year. Step 5F is to verify the retirement plan checkboxes in the employee tax maintenance window. So in that tax maintenance window, there's a checkbox that just says retirement plan, and that's what controls whether the checkbox gets marked on the W-2 or not. So what I like to do is run a report, a smart list or Excel report of everyone who has a retirement plan deduction, and then run a smart list of who has that checkbox marked. That's on the basic employee smart list, I believe. and then compare that list and make sure that if you have a retirement plan, the checkbox is marked, and if you don't have a retirement plan, that that checkbox is unmarked. So make sure that those settings are right and get those correct. Step 5D is to verify that your electronic W-2 product is activated before creating your year-end wage file. So the email W-2 product from Integrity Data is very popular. A number of our clients have it. So we've learned that you've got to make sure that that product is active before you do your actual year-end close. Otherwise, the system or that product won't see that those W-2s are available to be sent out. So make sure it's active beforehand, and then just note that just because you have email earning statements activated does not mean that you have email W-2s activated. Make sure you've got both products listed there. Okay. So now we finally get back down to step 6, which is year-end closing itself, just creating that year-end wage file. So just to note, there is no physical file or actual file that gets created and saved to your desktop or anything like that. The year-end wage file is a set of tables within your company database, and that's what the file is. So it's really just a set of tables. It's nothing that gets saved to a location anywhere. So that year-end file or those tables will get created in your database, and you're going to see a progress bar pop up saying that the file is being created. When it is done, nothing happens. The window itself just closes. There's no warning to say okay or finish or complete. It's just done. So just be aware of that. If you're sitting around wondering if anything's happened or not, go ahead and check your Dynamics GP process monitor to see that nothing's being is still in process. But if that process monitor is blank, you can know that your year-end closing is complete, or at least the year-end wage file was complete. Okay. Step B is to print the year-end wage report. This is a very handy report. What this will do is give you 1 page per employee, which is essentially a preview of their W-2. And then on the very last page, it will be a summary of all of your employees' information, which is essentially your W-3. You will get very familiar with this report because this is what we're going to use to tie out to your 941s and your payroll benefit and deduction summary for the year, your tax summaries, all of this we want to balance and tie to that year-end wage report. So that report is very popular, and it also just allows you to spot check your employees. If you do have a large number of employees, remember this does print 1 page per employee. So print this to screen first or to Adobe as a PDF. I wouldn't necessarily print this one out to paper first just because it can be very large. Okay, step 7 is to create a post year-end wage backup of your Dynamics database and your company database. Step 8 is to verify your W-2 and 1099-R information. This is where a number of edits are made as well. If you need to edit your W-2s individually, this is the time to do that. If edits are made, we recommend that you take another backup so that you don't lose those edits. Ideally, if it's anything to do with wages or pay, we would suggest that you remove your year-end wage file, process those adjustments or corrections through an actual payroll or a manual check, and then reclose the year, because that way your payroll detail ties out to your W-2s at the end of the year. When you edit your W-2 itself, you're just editing the year-end wage file. You're not editing your detailed data. And so if you make those edits, it's only in the wage file itself. And if you remove the year-end wage file for whatever reason, you also lose those edits. So be cautious when you're making edits. Again, we suggest that you do it in the actual, remove your payroll year and wage, process the corrections, and reclose the year. But if you need to just edit the W-2 itself, just know the edits are only in your year-end wage file, and that we recommend you take another backup so that you don't lose those edits. And we've got a note here about your Medicare qualified government employees. So for employees who do qualify for that, that setting is marked in your employee tax maintenance window. There's a checkbox for Medicare qualified government employees. And if you are one of those employees, there is a separate process for when you print your year-end wage report in step 6B, you have to process a separate report just for those MQGEs. And also when editing, you'll want to make sure that your lookups are looking for those Medicare qualified government employees. If you're missing any employees, you get through and you're looking at your data and you can't find your employee, make sure that that checkbox wasn't inadvertently marked for them so that they appear with the rest of the employees. Some clients truly do have Medicare qualified government employees, but I'd say the majority of our clients don't. So if you're missing anybody, make sure that that checkbox wasn't marked for someone. All right. Step 8B is to print a validation report, and that is under the Print W-2 form window. And the validation report is kind of like your build report, your exception report, and it just says, hey, here's some things that I think that you should check on before continuing on. In general, these are address issues because somebody's address is too long for magnetic media and you need to shorten the address or move that down to address line 2. Other issues are somebody had some sort of a state tax, but no state was specified. If there's an issue with duplicate or invalid Social Security numbers, that's highlighted on the report. And the other one is that the the actual withheld Social Security or Medicare tax is slightly off from what that tax was calculated to be. Sometimes there's just because of rounding, you're off a few cents, and those are highlighted in that report. So ideally, that validation report would be blank, but it is a good place to start to see what edits or corrections need to be made. Again, you can make those edits on the W-2s themselves, like we talked about in step 8. But if it's something larger, again, we recommend that you remove your payroll year-end wage file, process that correction through payroll itself, and then reclose the year. Okay, so now all of our data is good. Everything's been validated. Everything ties out. We're ready to print our W-2s and our W-3s. So W-2s and W-3s can be printed as many times as needed. Don't worry if you loaded your stock wrong or had your forms upside down. Not a big deal. You can print those forms as many times as you like. Again, the most common form is the 4-up form, the single feed 4-up form, but and that's on preprinted forms. But if you have TP 2016 R2 or higher, you can print on blank paper using the one wide form box type. So if you want to, you can print on blank paper as well. Step 9B, to edit your 1095. This is very similar to editing your W-2s. And so there's a couple notes here. Is one, if you want to exclude inactive employees from having a 1095 print for them, you can enter 2A in box 16 for all 12 months for that employee, and then they won't get a 1095. Personally, I think that if you haven't done this already, that is a lot of check boxes to mark and fill out, as opposed to just letting the piece of paper print and excluding it from the actual mailings that go out. But there is a way to include those employees, and that's the method. And again, if you have a number of edits to be made, similar to the edit W-2s, if you have a large number, then go ahead and take another backup so that you don't lose those edits. Okay, so you've made your edits. Now it's time to print your 1099-Rs, 1096, 1095s, and 1094. So again, print as many times as you need and just generate those forms. All right, step 11 is to create the electronic W-2 file. This is listed as optional on Microsoft's checklist, but for most people it's not optional. This is the method that they're required to do. So this is producing the actual file itself that you're going to upload to the Social Security Administration. So just another note here, make sure that you know what your Social Security Administration login or credentials are now for Business Services Online, which is where you're going to upload that file to. Just a note that a couple of years ago, AccuWage changed, so it's not a separate download anymore, but instead you have to log in to Business Services Online, and then there is the AccuWage filing program is within that site. So just a quick note on what AccuWage is for those who have an electronic file, it is kind of a test system for the Social Security Administration. You take your file that GP has now generated, and you upload it to AccuWage, and it's going to run through and validate that your data in there looks good. If it sees any issues with names or addresses or information that it just looks incorrect, it's going to highlight those errors for you so that you know to go back and fix those and recreate a new file before doing your final submission. So it's just another check to validate that your data is good before doing your final send to the Social Security Administration. Okay? So you're going to generate that file and run it through AccuAge. Step 12 is to archive inactive HR information. This is listed as optional and it's not a very common thing to do. The main perk of it was to prevent inactive employees from showing up in your lookups. But in newer versions of GP, the lookup windows have the ability to exclude inactive records now, and so it's not as big of a perk. So if you want to do it, you can, but I'd say most clients, even those with HR, skip this method or skip that step. Step 13 is to make sure you've got your 2020 fiscal period set up so that when you go to post payroll, it doesn't give you an error saying that that fiscal period hasn't been created yet. So get those fiscal periods set up. And step 14 is to close the 2019 payroll fiscal periods, which is, again, just checking the checkbox for payroll to say that nothing else can be posted to that year. Step 15 is to download our 2020 payroll tax tables. Again, those are going to be released mid-December. And if you are using the automatic method, launch GP as administrator so that you don't get any errors. So get those 2020 tables in there. Step 16 is to update your other rates and maximums and your employee elections as well. So you'll have your individual employer, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp rates that may need updated, new changes to your local taxes and rates, and then increased maximums for 401k, HSA, FSA, all of your employee changes from open enrollment that need to get in, new rates for plans that need to be rolled down. So all of that happens in step 16, which is a lot of information. So make sure that you get all of that stuff in the system and updated for employees before your first 2020 payroll. And finally, step 17 is to run the PTO manager year end. So once you've finalized your payroll year end, before you process your first 2020 payroll, you're going to want to close out PTO manager. So again, if you're using PTO manager, you can use that PTO utility to close the year, and that will reset your year-to-date balances to 0 and clear out or kind of reset you for any year-to-date maximums that you might have set up for your plan. All right, so now let's go over our demo of the actual payroll year-end close. All right, so I am now in CP here. I have logged in as the administrator, system administrator, so I'm in as the SA, and just for peace of mind, I have changed my CP user date to 12/31/19. That's the year I'm going to be closing. This isn't required. I just, peace of mind, always change my CP system date to 12/31/19 when doing anything year-end related. So, all right, so let's start with step 1. So step 1 is to verify that we have the last 2019 tax table applied. So I'm going to go here to payroll tax. And I can see here that my last tax update says 9/27/19, which is exactly what I want. That is the date that the round 4 was released, and that was the last one from Microsoft. So I'm good. I know I've got the right tables that are going to be applied when creating my year-end wage file. Step 2 is to complete all 2019 payrolls, and I'm going to say that that is done. That's been completed. And step 3 is to complete all of my month-end and quarter-end processes. Again, I'm going to say we're good there. I've done all of that, ran my 941, everything's all complete. Okay. Step 4 is to create the year-end wage backup, and step 5 is to install the year-end update. Again, I'm going to say that all of these have been completed in my environment. And again, ideally that year-end update would have happened before you even started this year-end process. That would have been done prior to this. So already complete. Step 5B is to check my PTO manager settings. So if I'm in payroll, I come to setup, PTO manager, and PTO options. I can see that my year-end closing using PTO utility checkbox is marked. So that will make sure that when I create my year-end wage file that it doesn't also close the year. All right. Step 5C is to run a smart list of all of our vacation, sick, and PTO balances. So I'm going to say that I've already done that. I've exported that to Excel and saved it with all of my other year-end reports. Step 5D is to verify our pay code benefit and deduction taxes. And so I typically like to just come through at the company level and scroll through to make sure that everything looks valid for me in here and that my rates and everything are correct. And then step 5E is to verify your W-2 boxes, labels, and ACA codes. And so in here, I can say, well, wait a second. For my 401k, that shouldn't be in W-2 box 13D. You can see you can scroll in here. So when we talked about only having one set of boxes and labels for code, that's what we meant. So I can check my wage source to know that box 13D isn't correct for 401k information. So I can change that and update that to be box 12D. And I can also check that my calendar year maximums are right, which that doesn't look right either. So I can update that to 19,000. And if I've made any changes to my W-2 boxes and labels, when I click Save, you can roll that down to your employees as well so they get the updated boxes. I'm going to roll down these changes to all records because you could have employees that contributed to your 401k plan that are no longer active or have since left the company. So you would want their information to be correct as well. So I'm going to say all records and I'm going to down that change. Okay. So continue that process for all of your benefits and deductions and pay codes to verify that your taxes and your W-2 boxes and labels are correct. Step 5F is to verify your retirement plan checkboxes. So on the employee tax maintenance window, okay, so we have our new window in here. It's changed a little bit, right? Because we've got our year-end update applied to accommodate for the new W-4. So you can see that there's the W-2 checkbox, and right here is the one for retirement plan. So you want to see if somebody has a retirement plan deduction, you want to make sure that checkbox is marked for them. If it's not marked here, it doesn't get marked on the W-2 by default, and you might have to edit it or do that through an edit on the Edit W-2 window, but this is where it's pulling from. You want to make sure that this is marked and it shows correctly for all employees. Another way to check that is just to run a quick smart list. So if you take your standard payroll smart list, you can add a column. And so you can add the W-2 box for retirement plan column to a basic smart list, and you can see who's marked. So right now, I've only got one employee, the one I just marked off as showing as having a retirement plan, and I don't necessarily think that's correct. I know that more people contributed to my retirement plan, so I would want to make sure that that box gets updated for employees, and because this is my basic employee maintenance or employee list, I can double click on those and go to their tax information and update them a little bit faster. Okay. So I'll say that all my check boxes are updated now. And I'm going to verify that my integrity data product is active. In this demo environment, I don't have the integrity data product, but you can just go, if you do have that integrity data employee email suite, just make sure that you've activated both email earning statements and email W-2. All right. Step 6 is to create my year-end wage file. So over under routines, you have year-end closing. Now, I am going to be, because this is a demo environment, closing the year 2028, but for everyone else, they're going to be closing 2019. So I'm going to go ahead and click process here. And it's giving me a warning to make sure that my selection for my reporting year is correct, probably because my system date is still 2019, but I'm going to say yes, that is correct. And it's going to start processing your file here. And you saw when it finished, it just simply closed out the window. So I want to verify that it really is done by going to my process monitor, but I see that this is blank here, so we're good. That process is complete. So now I want to print my year-end wage report. And again, I've got my year 2028 selected here. And here's where I see the difference between regular employees and that Medicare qualified government employee. If you have Medicare qualified government employees, you have to run a separate report just for them. I'm going to do it just for my standard employees. I'm going to do all of it and then just print this to screen. Again, it's going to print one page per employee. So if you have a lot of employees, it could take a while to generate, and I would do it to screen or to Adobe first. Okay, so I have 28 employees and 28 pages. So first thing to check at the top, and I'll just a little bigger here for you, is what tax rates were used to calculate my wages. So it says Social Security is 6.2. My wage limit is 132.9, which I know was the correct one for 2019. And my Medicare rate was 1.45. So I know I've used the right tax tables. If I saw 137 something, I would have known that I had the 2020 tables downloaded. So make sure that this says 32.9 for 2019. Okay. So as I scroll down here, it's not very pretty, but it has a lot of good information here. This is a preview of my W-2. And so it shows my boxes 1, 2, and 3, everything down here, a summary from my box 12D amount, and everything else. So all of this is included in here. And this is where I can start checking my information for my employees. And if I go down to the very end, I get a summary of all of my information. And this is essentially, again, my W-3. So I'm going to get really familiar with this report. Got my number of employees, my wage amounts, my special items, other boxes, my states, and this is what I'm going to use to start tying things out. Step 7 is to create a payroll year-end backup. So I'm going to say that that has already been done. And step 8 is to edit my W-2 and 1099-R information. So under routines, I can come here to edit W-2s, and I can scroll through, and based off the year-end wage report I just ran and my reconciliations I've done, I can scroll through here and see if there's any edits that I want to make. Again, I would suggest that if there were edits to make to any of these values here, edits to wages or taxes, that you remove your year-end wage file, make those corrections through a full payroll, and then reclose your year. But if you need to make smaller adjustments, you can do that in here and make whatever corrections to different boxes or labels or dates or whatever you need to do. You can edit everything in here. And again, if you forgot to check your retirement plan checkbox, you can fix that in here as well. But again, any edits made in this Edit W-2 window only affect the year-end wage file. As soon as you remove your year-end wage file, you lose all of these edits. So be careful of what you're editing in here. It might be more valuable to take the time to remove the year-end wage file itself and make the actual changes in payroll. You can go through and update your information and verify your W-2s. And then you can do the same for 1099-Rs as well in this Edit 1099-R information when you make whatever edits needed there. Okay. All right, step 8B is to print the validation report. I'm going to come over to Print W-2s, and I'm going to select the right year. So again, I'm doing 2028, and I'm going to print this validation report here. So ideally, this is blank, and I'll make this bigger for you. But it does highlight things that might have potentially have errors. And so in this case, in my sample company, I've got a whole bunch of bogus employees with bogus social security numbers, and so there's a flag on all of these to say that this is an invalid social security number. So I can see that I've got some social security numbers to fix. This is, again, just warnings that I can still continue on with my payroll, even though I've got these warnings in here. But again, the most common ones are addresses that are too long, Social Security or Medicare tax that was withheld versus estimated as off a smidgen because of rounding, or somebody had state tax withheld, but no state was defined for that employee, or that state wasn't assigned to that employee. So go back, make all those corrections, or as many as you can. Most people kind of ignore the address corrections, but you can, I like to have a nice clean report. So I'm going to pretend that all of these socials are valid, that I have a clean report, and I can move on with my process. So the next step would be to print my W-2s and my W-3. So again, I've selected the right year. I'm going to choose W-2 forms. And I'm going to show you the different options here. Most clients choose this 4-up laser form, meaning that you have a pre-printed form from Deluxe or Office Depot or wherever you got it. You stuck it in your printer and you're just filling in the blanks. That's the most common. But if you have GP 2015 R2 or higher, you can use this one wide forms with box. And I'll just show you an example of what that looks like. This is the equivalent of printing on blank paper. And GP will print box information for you and fill everything out. You don't have to worry about any alignment issues. That gets done there. So it's 28 pages, one for each employee, but you can see that it doesn't have the instructions on it. All right. But again, just to show you, most people do, they would use the 4-up laser form. I'll just print this to screen. But again, it's assuming that you've got a proof-printed form that you've put into your printer, and this is just filling it in the boxes. And then there's one copy in each corner of the form. All 4 copies on one sheet of paper for each. You printed your W-2, and you can print your W-E as well. That's my transmittal form. Just go ahead and print. And for the W-3, it always assumes that you have a pre-printed form that you're sticking in. There's an option to print. So I've printed those, and I just want to show you up here, you don't have to print all. You're printing your W-2 forms, you don't have to print all of them. You can print a range of employees. You can reprint a single employee if you want to, but you don't have to do everyone all at once. So I've printed my W-2s, and now I'm going to work on my 1095. So I come over here back to my Edit W-2 window, which actually shows me my 1095 information as well. So as I scroll through here, I can click on my 1095C, and I can realize, I didn't have all my stuff set up, so I need to fill this information out for the employee because these boxes weren't correct. So I can make whatever edits I need to in here so that my 1095s are correct. Again, this is only saved in my year-end wage file itself. So if I remove my year-end wage file, I'm going to lose those edits. So just be careful when making edits to your 1095Cs or to your W-2. So I'll make all of my edits and verify those. And now I can print my 1095s and my 1095, 1099Rs and all those other tax forms. So 1099Rs, I don't think I have any. That's the edit window. Here again. So if I wanted to print my 1095Cs, I could just come here, print. With the 1095Cs, it does print on blank paper, so you can see your information in here. And you can see that I've got my 1A and 2C edits that I just made. It's going to print out that information along with the instructions for my employees. So you can print all of those out. And then similar to the W3, you've got your cover sheet, which is your 1094C transmittal. Go ahead and print that as well. All right. I've got all my tax forms printed, and now I can move on to my electronic page file. Step 11 is to create our W-2 electronic file to send to the Security Administration. So first thing, you're going to get a pop-up saying, reminder, sign up for your Social Security Administration login. And you'll need that login because you're going to put it in here in your user ID number field. One thing to note is that people often forget about this submitter button down here. And what doesn't often get filled in is this email address. So make sure you've got an email address in there. Otherwise, it's going to tell you that you're missing required fields. So fill out the submitter button, fill out your user ID number, and then specify where you want your electronic federal to go. So I'm just going to save mine to my desktop. Okay. And then make sure you select the company that you're creating for. If you've done it before and you are going to be doing it again, it's just going to give you a warning. You're going to be reprocessing, so that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and create the file. So once you've created the file, it's going to give you a report with your W3 summary information. And, oh, looks like I printed this one for 2019. But, you know, you've got all of your summary information down here that should tie out to your year-end wage form that you printed. Okay. So we've created our year-end wage file, and step 12 is to do the optional archiving of the HR information, which I'm going to skip because, again, you don't need to archive anything just to exclude our inactive employees. That's now on our regular employee lookups now, and just say exclude inactive employees, and we would rather do that than archived information. Okay. Step 13 is to set up our 2020 fiscal period. So I come over into my fiscal period setup window, just making sure, do I have 2020 created? Yes or no? In this case, I need to create year 2029. And so I'll calculate that period. Okay, so it's there. And I'll click OK. And then let's see, step 14 is then to close your 2019 fiscal period. So I closed that a little too early. So if I went into 2019, which is earlier than I have in my my test environment here, but I would just come through and I would check the payroll checkboxes for 2019 so that for all 12 periods, so that that would be marked as closed. My test company here, we're working in the future. I don't have the year 2019 really created. All right. Step 15 would be to download the 2020 payroll tax tables. So again, I would want to launch GP as a local admin, log in as the SA, and then there we go. Under maintenance US payroll updates, check for tax updates. I could do my automatic method, type in my authorization number, and it would download those gross recent tax tables. Now, today's date, I know that if I do the automatic method, it will not download the 2020 tables yet. They have not been released, and so I can't validate or show you what that would be necessarily yet because they haven't been released, but this process would be the same here. It would download my tax tables for me, apply them, And then I would verify. Here that this date would say something around 12/21/19, and that would be my 2020 round one table. They just haven't been released yet, and so this date isn't updating because they're just not out yet. So next would be to update your rates and maximums. So a lot of people forget about this, so don't do that. So come over and do unemployment tax. If you have your individual employer rates or anything that needs to be updated in here or wage limits that get increased for you, make sure to update those in here. So SUTA, workers' comp. Don't forget about updating your local taxes as well. We rolled down those rates, and then your benefit and deduction maximums for the year, especially 401k, FSA, things like that, along with your regular employee updates for changes for the new year or open enrollment. Okay. And then the final step is to run the PTO manager year end. So over in, I think it's under utilities, their PTO utilities. It's just one simple button to process the PTO year end close. So I can process that. And again, that's because during my payroll year end, I can close and unclose the year multiple times. And so I don't want that process going back and forth in my payroll year end close to affect my PTO balances. So it's just a very quick process. I click process and I can double check my process monitor to verify it's complete. All right. Okay, so now that you've seen what all is involved with a Dynamics GP payroll year-end close, you may be thinking, where can I go for help? So first, you can email us at yearendsupport@arcticit.com, and our year-end team will get back in contact with you to help determine what your needs are for year-end and make a plan for business. You can also contact your client success manager. And finally, you can check out our year-end site. Under the useful resources section of the site, you can find links to the W-3 reconciliation template, W-2 box information, links for ordering tax forms, the presentation handouts, and all sorts of things. So it's a really good resource to go to get everything you need for year-end. And with that, we've come to the end of our presentation, so thank you very much.